Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Year 6 SATS 2024 presentation. I hope you're all well on this Tuesday evening. I am hoping to keep you for no longer than 15 minutes this evening, and this will be recorded. So if you wish to get any further information from me or watch it back, feel free to watch in your own time. I'll be popping it onto a YouTube link. So, I wanted to start by basically saying that although it's called the SATS presentation, it's really important that I position this correctly. As a school, we seek to equip children with the vision, passion, and skills needed to transform society. And what we mean by that is we need to give them all the tools at their disposal to be absolute awesome ambassadors and kingdom builders in the world around us. And that starts with really high quality teaching of English and maths. But we see so much more in our children than we do a test result or a test score. And as parents and sometimes as schools, we can want to pursue the academic excellence above the children's well-being and also the children's enjoyment of learning. And what I've learned in my numerous years of teaching year 6 is having a really fine balance between well-being and positivity and working towards a common goal can really enable great results. And we see that year after year. So firstly is really important just to bear in mind and mention to you that we aren't going to be putting a significant pressure on the children, but we are equally going to teach them really important skills of how to prepare towards a suite of tests. Because let's face it, they're going to go into year 7 and probably in the first week, they're going to get a lot of tests and then they're going to get predominantly more and more and more as they work through. So if we can build them with resilience and shared knowledge, then that's going to make a massive difference going forward. This evening is more just about the tests themselves, so as parents you have a greater understanding. And also I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing to help prepare them. So the SATs are standardized assessment tests that are given to children at the end of Key Stage 2. Your children will have already completed some SATs tests in Key Stage 1 in Year 2. Interestingly enough, the government have now stopped doing those tests and made them optional. These tests are not optional for Key Stage 2 teachers. So ignore the Monday the 8th is a bank holiday. It is. I've no idea why that's important on this particular slide. But it starts on Monday the 13th of May and runs through to Thursday the 16th of May. And these are the suite of 6 tests that the children will complete. Don't worry, it will all come out in further information, but this just gives you an idea of what they've got in store. Writing is assessed using evidence collected throughout Year 6. There is no Year 6 SAT writing test, and that is done by myself and the Year 6 team. And then we will be externally moderated to make sure that our judgments are correct. If your child is absent on the day of a test, they will be able to take them up to 5 school days afterwards, as long as they have not been in contact with a child who has taken the test. If the child has a crisis in the morning, we can either delay the start of the test for all, or they can join slightly later. This is something that we did last year and worked really well and made sure that the child was in the right place to start their test. When and how the SATs are completed. Tests take place during normal school hours, but they are under strict exam conditions. Children aren't allowed to talk to each other from the moment the assessments are handed out until they're collected. And after the tests are collected, they are packaged away in a very complex packaging system, sent to a warehouse where they are marked externally by SATs markers. I have had the joy over the last few years to be a Key Stage 2 maths marker. And so it's all marked online via your laptop. All the scripts are scanned into the system, and then you get, say, 500 question 1s, 500 question 2s, 500 question 3s. They recollate it and provide the results to the children. So there is no one better to help and support them than someone who understands the mark schemes inside and out. These are the suite of tests. No tests last longer than 60 minutes unless for children, unless for children with additional time. Spelling, punctuation, and grammar is looking at the 45 minutes. If any of the parents have peeked over the children's shoulders as they're doing spag.com, that is exactly what that would be. And the second one is a spelling, punctuation, and grammar test, which is read out by myself and is 50 minutes in length, roughly. Day 2 is the reading test. Interestingly, it used to be reading on day 1 and grammar on day 2 for any parents who've been through this a couple of years ago. But we felt that the reading test is probably seen as one of the more challenging ones. And so they didn't want it on the first day. So we eased them in a bit more with the grammar, punctuation, and spelling test. Reading is 60 minutes long, and I'll talk about that in more detail. And then we have 3 arithmetic papers you are very likely to have seen as part of some of Year 6's homework up to date, some of the some of the paper 1 arithmetic papers. There are specific arrangements for SATs for children with additional needs. If a child has an EHCP, they're automatically entitled to 25% extra time. Any children who have a dyslexia diagnosis, ADHD, ASD, but are not on an EHCP are not automatically entitled to 25% extra time, and we as a school will need to apply for that. It also needs to be part of the normal classroom practice from here towards the SATs. There are a number of unusual things that can be done, including using word processors independently and so forth. But very often, children will be provided with a scribe if needed, or they may be provided with a reader if needed to help them with some of the questions. For children who struggle to maintain attention for a long period of time, there may be some rest breaks or prompting that can be used. If your child breaks an arm the day before, which happened 2 years ago, we will provide a scribe and support them through that and make sure that they're not at a disadvantage. I should have mentioned at this point in time that the chat is open for any questions that you might have, and I can try and answer as we go along or at the end. The results are externally marked, and once the tests have been given, the following scores are given. The first score is a raw score. The second is called a scaled score, and the third one is called a judgment on whether the national standard has been met or not. After marking each test, the external examiner converts the raw score into a scaled score, and even though the tests are made at the same standard each year, the questions must be different. This means that the difficulty of the tests may vary. It's contradictory. It's taken directly from the DFE. Scaled scores ensure an accurate comparison of performance over time. So, collectively, let's take a deep breath as we try and understand this scoring metric. I've been in Year 6 a number of years. It makes total sense to me, but to parents, this is alien. So, as you can see over here, we have a score of 80. That's the lowest score that a child can get. That would be getting, for example, out of 110, 1 to 20 marks correct, 1 to 15 marks correct, something like that. All the way up to 120, which might be the child getting all their answers correct. In the middle, we have the 100 score. The 100 score is really the notional pass mark for the test. It's the one that the children are aiming for. They're aiming for a score of 100. However, the blue line is roughly the average score for the country. So most children, on average, 103 is their average score. If you take a look at our previous results as a school, our average scores are around 106, 107, those lines. But again, that depends on the cohort-specific nature of each group and changes every year. You will also see, although it doesn't have the number next to it, a little green line there. The green line is the greater depth standard of 110 plus. This is a highly, highly aspirational mark. For the reading test, the children can only get 2 to 3 questions wrong. On the maths test, it is literally 10 marks out of 110 before it then scales down. So it is a highly aspirational mark and one that children shouldn't be benchmarking their success on. Very important. Children should aim for the highest possible mark, and we will help them to prepare themselves towards that. But what they shouldn't be doing is feeling disappointed if they don't get 110 or plus. Passing these tests are the main aim. So, pressure is not on Parents, you will not be asked to complete any of these questions. So grammar punctuation, I'm imagining lots of laughter in the background. The grammar punctuation and spelling test is on Monday, the 13th of May. It consists of two papers. The first one focuses on grammar and punctuation, and the second one focuses solely on spelling. This is what the paper one will focus on. Combining words and phrases, clauses, verb forms, punctuation, and so on. And these are the types of questions that the children will complete. For those of you who are curious, a command uses an imperative verb at the beginning, so run. The second one, although football is his favourite sport, James also enjoys watching tennis on TV. This question will be marked incorrect if the child did not put a capital letter at the beginning of this sentence. Finally, the passive voice, Romans invaded Britain over 2,000 years ago. The Romans invaded, rewrite it in the passive sense. So Britain was invaded by the Romans over 2,000 years ago. May have taught you something new there. Into the spelling test, that is where I will literally read out 20 spellings that the children are asked to complete. They increase in difficulty as they go forward. And the first spelling was lamb. So not an easy one to start with. And again, it's testing them on all their spellings. Best preparation for this would be spelling shed. On to the Tuesday, there is a reading test which lasts for 60 minutes in length. The test is designed to measure the children's comprehension of age-appropriate reading material. And there are 3 different set texts. They can be fiction, non-fiction, and or poetry. These are the areas that they have to meet, known as the content domains. And very simply put, the main 2 are retrieve and record information and make inferences from the text. This is something that we do an awful lot in our phonics to fluency sessions in school, and children, on the whole, are doing very well in this area. They will have maybe 3 different text types. This one here starts as a nice, easy one, before moving on to the second one, which is looking at bats under the bridge, and there's a couple where they have to do drawing of lines across. And then thirdly, you can see some greater depth examples where they have to come up with a personality trait and then give some evidence for that. On the right-hand side of those were just some examples of the mark scheme that has to be applied to the test. Since occurring test information, there's been a tendency for 3 types of questions to be most popular. 44% has been looking at inference. So, for example, a child standing at the edge of a playground, why might we be standing at the edge of a playground? What might we be thinking? What might we be feeling? What might have happened to them? 38% of them is literally going and finding. We call them the retrieval questions, or go fetch. So they're going to go and find the information in the text and bring it back and write it down. 10% are looking at words in context. These are the most difficult to teach to a child because those questions are the ones that they either know what the word means or they don't. So once we've done Monday and Tuesday, English is done and out the way, and we will ceremonially throw the tests into the cupboard, and then we'll make an attempt at starting on our maths. The maths will be an arithmetic paper, which is 30 questions in length.
James.
And then if there's any questions, I'll take them in a moment, if that's okay. I'm just going to see who.
Caleb's too. Huh? Caleb's.
There we go. Whoops. It's all going Pete Tong. There we go. Back one more. Smooth. Right. So arithmetic paper 1 is the first one. That is written methods. You'll have seen them. They came home for a number of homeworks and they'll continue to do so. Paper 1 is the easiest paper of the 3 to get the marks because there is 0 surprises on this test paper. The children know exactly what is going to come up on those tests. They just don't know what numbers are going to come up. So they know there's going to be a multiplication. They know there's going to be 2 long multiplications. There's going to be 2 long divisions. They know that there is going to be some adding of fractions, some subtracting of fractions, some percentage questions. There are no surprises on this paper 1. Paper 2 and paper 3, on the other hand, is anything from year 3 to year 6, which are put into worded questions. There is no deciding factor whether it goes on to a paper 2 or paper 3, to the point that last year I actually swapped the paper 2 and the paper 3 fronts around because the children constantly thought that the paper 3 was more difficult. So when they did the paper 2 paper, and I told them it was actually the paper 3 one, that threw them. So there's no difference in difficulty between a paper 2 and a paper 3. They are both equally balanced, but there may be more bar charts on the paper 2 in 2022, and in 2023 there might be more pie charts on paper 3. It's very much down to the way that the tests are constructed. Let's have a little look at what they look like. Here's an example of a particular arithmetic paper. You will see here on this particular question, question 20, that they need to use a particular method in order to get a mark. If they don't get the mark because they get the answer wrong, if they have got the two parts of the question right, also known as the composite parts, they will get a mark. So if they don't follow this method, they're unlikely to get any marks, and we call this a double jeopardy, meaning they get 0 rather than getting the 1 if they make an error. Here are some more examples of some paper 1 1-mark questions. Some, you will see here, are mental methods. Others are more written methods. None of these questions, look at the order of number. So for example, BODMAS or BIDMAS. But all of these questions are ones that they will know what is coming up because they have seen these questions over and over and over again. These are the questions that children follow every single morning when they come and do morning maths. A reminder, school is open from 20 to 9 for children to come in and do morning maths if required, most days. Every so often, the door opens a little bit later than that time, but on the whole, 20 to 9. So if you imagine that over a course of a week, that's 100 extra minutes of maths that those children are completing versus a child who turns up at 9 o'clock. Papers 2 and papers 3. Paper 2 will take place on the Wednesday and the Thursday. Those dates are incorrect and wrong. These papers require children to demonstrate their mathematical knowledge and skills, as well as their ability to solve problems in a mathematical reasoning. They cover a wide range of different domains. These might be questions like this, where we're looking at coordinates, or we're looking at rounding and applying it to a worded problem. There are some 2-mark questions, which require them to do multiple steps. So a manager of a flower shop orders 4 boxes of red roses each. There are 50 roses in each box, so 4 times 50. The manager takes bunches with 6 roses in each, so divide your 200 by 6. What's the greatest number of bunches that you can get? And then if they make the error of 33 and a remainder, so 33 and a third. So the question asks, what's the greatest number of bunches that can be made? So obviously it's not 33 and a remainder of 2, it's just 33. On questions like this, there's a speech bubble and children need to give explanation as to why. 32 is not in the 3 times table. That would get them the mark. And then just for fun, they also like to chuck in a 3-mark question. So a 3-mark question requires children to do 3 different steps. So there are 25 classes in a school. Each class has 34 pupils. So they need to do 34 multiplied by 25. They then need to either work out what 62% is and take it away from the whole, or they need to work out that actually, if that's 62%, I can add 8% to get to 70 and 30. So I know it's 38% and work out what 38% of it is. If a child makes an error in this first calculation here of 25 times 34, but then does the second and third step correctly, they will get an error, what's called an error carried forward mark. So that would actually be worth 2 marks. If they made an error, you can see on the mark scheme here, they made an error in the multiplication, but then they completed the next 2 steps correctly, they would actually get 2 out of 3 marks. This is why it's critically important that they show their working. If I had £1 for every time I said that, I'd be in the Maldives right now. So, supporting your children to prepare for the SATs. We are doing all that is needed in school, including keeping the tests low-key. Children should not want to do their best, should just want to do their best and work their hardest up to the test. And we will not be putting pressure upon the children regarding the tests. We will be encouraging them to work hard towards the tests. That's the right thing to do. We will not be encouraging them to get the highest possible scores or making it out that if they don't achieve a particular standard, that that's not good enough. We're just looking for the effort. And this is something that I know works well, and I know will get good results, but also the children will feel a great sense of accomplishment once they've achieved it. The SACs do focus on what children know about maths and English, but they don't reflect how talented they are in science and geography, art and PE. And they certainly won't highlight all of their amazing personal characteristics. We know that. And they don't tell the whole story. If they did or didn't meet the standard, it's not necessarily by what margin. It could be by 1 mark, it could be by 20 marks. It's all about our communication with the high schools, which is what's most important. Meeting the standard might not be the same as last year. And as a result, a child who thinks that they've done well in that year might have been on an easier test and they needed to get 5 or 6 extra marks. In reality, there's 1 or 2 papers each day that last 30 to 60 minutes, and it's 4 days out of a whole primary school career that they've had. And that's my message to you this evening. Yes, we want to help them and support them. You will have seen that some children brought home some additional books. They were totally of their own choice. I was throwing a load out and I put them at the front and said, if you want to do some extra work and earn some raffle tickets, great, go ahead. But there's no pressure on me for that. What there is pressure on, though, is that when children arrive in school, that they're prepared, that they're ready, that their attention is on the task in hand, that they're working hard, that they're supporting their friends in their learning, and that they're giving their absolute best. I am delighted to continue in Year 6, working with them in the mornings on Monday to Friday, teaching them maths, and through the week also teaching them some English. And so I will be in control of the SATs for the children in Year 6. I will be the person who will be communicating with you where they're at and what they need to work on if you wish to. There are a couple of random things that I always mention at this point. Some parents may want their children to have a tutor before a test. There is 0 requirement for this. We are doing enough in school to help prepare your child to get the best of their ability. However, if you think that it helps them with their motivation or it helps them with their confidence, then we will absolutely support you in that decision. But there is no pressure or requirement or need or want for your children to be taught to a test. Secondly, please do try and keep away from the 2022 and 2023 papers. They're the last 2 sets of papers which your children have not completed. What does happen if they do those prior tests at home is that unfortunately they come in and it looks like they've absolutely smashed it out of the park, and I don't recognize, and they don't tell me that they've done it at home. So if that has happened already, you may have done a past paper 2022, 2023, or 2019 as we're doing over the next few days. Do just let me know, and then I can factor that into the test marks. Just drop me an email. So I have tried to cover everything as quickly as I possibly can. I know I'm not known for my succinctness. However, this evening, I've tried very hard to maintain that. I hope that's been beneficial for you all. Thank you all for those who have been able to join live in the moment. Really do appreciate that. If you're watching this back, you know that you can drop me an email at any time, c.lawson@pda.lancs.sch.uk, and I will be more than happy to provide further information. Regarding homework in the next couple of weeks, that will continue to be, it will ramp up a little bit with regards to a piece of SPAG or grammar and a piece of maths at the same time. So do keep an eye out for that. Make sure children are trying to do as much as they can, and do encourage them if they want to do some additional work to pick that up and pop it onto Shobi. Mrs. Ross and I, Mrs. Yonka and Mrs. Beaumont are all looking forward to seeing the great work that they've completed. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to stop recording here, and I'll open it up to the floor if anyone has any questions. If not, feel free to leave. If you're on a catch-up, then do feel free to drop us an email.